This is so sexy.
लाइव हो गया। अटेंडेड होता है फिर कंडक्टर होता है तुम्हारा क्या हुआ डालने को नहीं आता तेरे को। हाँ नहीं लग रहा लाइट आ गया तो क्या हुआ। मैंने बोलना होता नहीं रोटेटर डिवाइस आता है।
Good morning to all respected teachers and my dear friends. As quoted by our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, the Union Budget 2023 is addressed to every Indian and towards nation building. The Union Budget 2023 is the first budget of the Amrit Kaal. Our very own Minister of State for Finance, Mr. Pankaj Chaudhary, said that this budget would be Ummeedon ka budget, that is, matching the expectations of general public. This budget is technology based. To decode this union budget, we have with us the eminent, well known, and inspirational Mr. Binoy Parikh. It is an honor to have him here among us. He has been a core member of the Katalyst advisors since April 2017. He is a chartered accountant and also holds a LLB degree. He advises on M&A transactions, promoter structures, and property planning. In Mumbai, he worked for two big four, that is PwC and KPMG, where he was a part of M&A transaction structuring team and also a part of M&A transaction litigation team at GK Choksi and Company in Ahmedabad. He is an expert in M&A field and has conducted several seminars. The entire day is also not enough to praise Sir. I sincerely apologize if I have overlooked something important. Now, I would like to call upon Mr. Vaibhav Sir to felicitate Mr. Benoit. Thank you, Vaibhav Sir. I would like to invite Vaibhav Sir to say a few words.
Good morning. I don't move ahead unless and until I get something. Good morning. Students who know me, they know that my lectures, I don't move ahead. Um, some great people said that two things are certain: death and tax. And when budget comes, there is only one thing that comes in my mind is tax. मेरी एज पे तो टैक्स ही दिमाग पे आता है, तुम्हारी एज पे कुछ और दिमाग में आएगा. So we thought of having a lot of students who had come to me saying that since sir, I'll just give a background that most of the students over here are Gujarati, and they would want to understand that with budget whether share market will go up or not. I said please look at Adani. They understood that there is a problem. The second thing, they come to me and say that sir, if share market is not going up, then where the jobs are available. So I yesterday watched one. The fear of students is that technology is going to take away their jobs. So there are two great examples which come to my mind is that will this budget give them the hope, which I feel so that there is a hope of jobs being created. Yesterday I saw a web series called as Fuzzy, and that web series talks about a certain thing of fake currency notes. And in that, the hope was that technology cannot take away human jobs. One thing that I be very sure of, it can never take away human jobs if you have the aspirations. The aspirations has to be in you, and I think this budget, when we were discussing with sir, this budget talks about that job creation, but job cannot be created unless and until you have that urge to work certain things. So I'll not take much of the time, and I'll not be between uh, the you and the speaker. So I'll press my words, but I think there are a lot of things to be learned as a student for you. And budget is all about preparations. And what it is a budget in simple words, if I have to share about budget, it is uh, you cannot prepare exam just before one day. We commerce people think that कि one day before हम पढ़ लेंगे तो हो ही जाएगा ना, एक दिन पहले पढ़ेंगे. सॉरी, ऑनलाइन में तो ये भी चलता था. आई टेक बैक माय वर्ड्स. ऑनलाइन में सर क्या बात कर रहे हैं, ऑनलाइन में तो दे यूज्ड टू टेल मी सर क्या बात कर रहे हैं, ऑनलाइन में तो एक घंटे पहले पता चलता था कौन सा पेपर है. बट देन वी रियलाइज ऑफलाइन में क्या हुआ है. Results are in front of us also. So I don't expect that students, when your semester 2, 4, whatever results comes out, you will be in flying colors. Thank you so much.
I would invite Sir to come up on the stage.
Am I audible? It's good to be back in college. So just as a commerce student, especially people who are pursuing CA course, I'm sure that articleship commitments wouldn't allow you to attend the college so much as you would want. So it's good to be back. And I just thought that I'll be one of you. That's why I'm in my informal clothes and not in any formal clothes. So I think, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. And I look forward to this next 45 minutes to an hour to interacting with you. So I think the way I'll approach this is basically it's not so much about tax, it's not so much about the budget itself, but it's the macro kind of aspects which I want you to be aware about because we live in a very volatile world. That's the truth. We have had so many things going on in the past 3 years. I cannot ever imagine that a student life will be online, but which has happened. So there's so much volatility which is going on. So it's not so budget. Frankly, it's not only about numbers. It is about the story behind the numbers. What do you do when you connect two dots? Because connecting in this world is quite important. That you have to connect two events as to how it happens, how is that happen, how would it impact, and what is the way forward around that. So of course you know this term called VUCA. So we live in a VUCA world, which is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That was the VUCA word, but VUCA has now become an outdated concept. It has been replaced by something which is called as BANI, which is brittle, agile, non-linear, and incomprehensible. And all the three words are anyway incomprehensible. So brittle because you have a sense of world which is falling apart. You have inflation, you have high interest rates, you have Russia invading Ukraine, you have the Adani crisis. I don't know how many of you are Harry Potter fans, but Voldemort was basically a villain with whose name cannot be spoken. So, Adani is a scam whose name cannot be spoken. So, the world has become quite brittle. It has become quite agile. So, I think Sir was saying that will technology replace human intervention, human jobs? So, it has become quite agile. It's not about replacement or it's not a binary in the sense that it's not black and white. It's not one or zero. And because you guys are very young, so you see world from the prism of binary. That ye nahi to ye nahi to ye. Nothing like that. It's the real world is effectively every shades of gray. Some are lighter shades of gray, some are darker shades of gray, but every shade of gray in between black and white. So you have to be agile in the sense that can you upskill yourself so that the technology cannot replace you. For example, I mean, I was amazed. I was working the other day, and you guys would know about Chat GPT, right? So it's very fascinating. But I don't know if you guys have tried the beta version, which is one more advanced version of Chat GPT. It is scary. So I just punched in that. Can you draft an agreement for me on sale of immobile property in India? And an entire agreement came. So I called my juniors. I was like, look, you have to compete with this. So either you upskill yourself or you just sort of be where you are, become a dinosaur, become a fossil, and therefore extinct. So you have to be agile. That's the aim. Then it's non-linear in the sense that, like I said, it's not a binary. It's not binary anymore. So for example, if I what is a linear scenario? I wake up, I say go for my exercise, then read something, go to office. There's a linear progression. That's not anymore. I mean, you will have small consequences resulting in small actions resulting in disproportionate consequences. So that's not linear. And the last is incomprehensible. I mean, for example, um, let me say, when COVID struck, anybody would not have imagined that it would impact the semiconductor industry. How is this even understandable? How can one foresee this? So it's incomprehensible. There could be certain indicators where you can connect it backwards in hindsight, but to start with, it's incomprehensible. So this bunny world, it's in addition to the VUCA, which was anyway volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So we have to live in this bunny world. So a lot of stress, but obviously there's always uh, there's all there is always um, there's always this place for people who are upskilling themselves, people who are quite agile. So I think the approach towards the budget, and I was going through the economic survey, which usually is published a day before the budget. So I was going through that, and the one thing that stuck out, that what was the approach towards budget? One is we went through 2 years of COVID. It was a V-shaped recovery. I mean, I remember the markets went down significantly in March 2020. 2 months, obviously, it was quite stressful. But then June, it started recovering. There was a lot of easy money. There was a lot of capital which was flowing in the hand. So the approach was that we just came out of a COVID period. That was pretty uncertain. That's point one. Just as we were coming out, Russia invaded Ukraine, and Russia, obviously, all said and done, is a major economy because it has a lot of natural resources in the form of crude oil. There's a lot of existing relationships with Europe, for example, supplying natural gas, etc. So that it led to a lot of things. Three things which it led to is that inflation in food, fuel, and fertilizers. So therefore, these three combined effect, led to a significant inflation over the last 1 or 2 years. Again, during pandemic, what had happened is that the governments thought that it's very. I mean, you should just print money, put money in people's hands, and therefore it will recover. The economy will recover. It did that initially. The consequence of that, which we realized last year, is that it led to significant inflation even in developed economies. For example, India, we've gone through a 7-8% kind of inflation in the past. But what has happened even in developed countries, where the growth rate was 2%, 1%, or muted, you had inflation figures at 7%. So it was effectively negative growth of 6%. So this easy money kind of a thing inflated a lot of valuation. It inflated stock markets, and now we are seeing the consequences where, because to tame inflation, the central banks are increasing interest rates. So that has now led to decrease in valuation suddenly. The third is that the commodity prices obviously increased significantly, and therefore the interest rates had to be increased. That unfortunately led to a dollar dominance. So while approaching the budget, we were in an era where we had huge current account deficits, rising we also had a huge fiscal deficit. I'll come to all those numbers shortly. But it's hard to imagine because growing up when I was a kid, I think the dollar rate was around say 35 to 40 rupees. So I am anyway a dinosaur in that sense as compared to you. You have seen an 82 rupees price. I mean that's crazy. Inflation, like I said, India was about at 7.8%. It is dampening down, but it's still very high. So, like I said, I mean, it's all a hyper-connected world because it cannot just be an India budget. It cannot be a union budget. It is in a very, very hyper-connected world. We have to see India as a major player in the context of the overall world. So it's not just the budget where we can look at us in isolation, but we have to also foresee the ramifications and the consequences of this budget and the previous budgets and the measures to come. So let me give you an example of what I mean by this hyper-connected world. I gave you an example about the semiconductor industry, right? So in COVID, what had happened is that people started working from home, and when you started working from home, you need more gadgets because you don't have anything else to do. So people started buying laptops, people started buying gaming devices, people started investing in technology, etc., etc. And it was not because they needed it; it was just because just in case if I need it, I'll buy it out. So the demand for electronics increased substantially. Now, coupled with the fact that the entire supply chain was broken, it led to a shortage in semiconductor industry. And semiconductors are used, the chips are used in anything and everything that you see. Even the simplest of devices like refrigerator would have chips. Most complex like laptops, iPads, phones obviously have a lot of chips. So it led to a lot of shortage in that and therefore an increase in prices of electronic goods over the past 2 3 years. So you know all these consequences, like I said, coming back to Bani, it was not in a linear fashion. In hindsight, may seem like in a linear fashion, but we don't know what will happen. So, in a nutshell, when the approach towards this budget effectively was based on a lot of things. One is obviously financial ramifications, geopolitical tensions, obviously certain country-specific factors, and individual households like yours and mine contributing to that economy. So, it's a amalgamation of various factors which led to this budget. So, just uh, in the sense that what are the main sectors which were affected by this budget, or what are the key focus areas coming before the budget? I'll just try and touch on the economic survey, which is quite a comprehensive document and much more robust than the budget itself. So, for example, uh, because most of us are Gujarati, so let me just say that how was the banking and capital markets impacted. For example, we had huge foreign exchange reserves in the past. 91 in 91 we had a balance of payment crisis and we had literally had to go to World Bank to ask for money. um, we didn't have money to pay for our imports. Since then we started opening up our economy and um, what it has led to right now is about $532 billion of forex reserves in September, and I think 562 in December, which is effectively about 9 months of import curve, which is fantastic. So, one is strengthening the balance sheet of RBI. Then, in the last 5 7 years, we had a lot of NPA crisis, the non-performing asset crisis, where corporates just started defaulting on loans because of the credit expansion over the last decade. So again, a long credit cycle over the last decade led to a lot of NPA in the current. So you had a lot of IBC, so insolvency and bankruptcy court came into picture, which started resolving quite substantially, but not as much as one would have wanted. So you had that. Current volatility, for example, is in the capital markets is because of that. Now one may think that how can one company or one group impact the entire market scenario? That's the basic question. So it's not only about one aspect about it. It's basically about the contagion. So one, when markets are overall down, people start taking the money out or cashing out, and therefore they just sit on cash. They don't redeploy back into the economy, and therefore the valuations come down because there are no buyers for good assets also. So that's the other thing. Um, the other main sector is manufacturing. There was a lot of focus going into the pandemic on manufacturing, including the production linked incentive scheme. So it was extended to 14 sectors like key starting materials, APIs, pharma, etc., telecom, specialty steel, and PLI is basically they insist to have an Atmanirbhar Bharat, a Make in India kind of a thing. Um, they started, the government had a lot of push on increasing the productivity and manufacturing in India. So they had certain incentives linked to the production. I was literally hoping that there would be some more sectors which are included in this project, but it didn't happen. So then there was a lot of focus on FDI investments. Of course, we have a very complex um, inbound investment kind of a regime. But having said that, as compared to say 30 years back, it's quite liberalized. So today, almost all sectors are open except for certain strategic sectors. There's a lot of capital inflows into India. The third main, and I was discussing with her, is that disinvestment has always been disinvestment in privatization or public sector units have always been the focus of government. But the targets have always been very ambitious, to say the least. So, so I think disinvest. I was on that we'll do a disinvestment of 1 lakh crores, 1,50,000 crores, without realizing that it's not the target; it's the market scenario in which you are doing a disinvestment. For example, today, if I want to do a IPO of say LIC equivalent, the valuations will be substantially down because the balance sheet of LIC, for example, has a lot of investments in Indian capital markets, including Adani. So the contagion effect again is that if you have exposure to Indian capital market, you wouldn't want to do an IPO right now. If you see in the last 1 month, there's not a single IPO which came. So um, now it's much more sombered down. It's at about 51,000 crores the target, which is pretty good because you have IDBI, you have various other container corporation, you have SCI, all those companies you may, I mean, it's achievable in my view about a 51,000 crores kind of a disinvestment cycle. The third is there was a lot of focus on China plus one policy. So in order to be self-reliant, you had a China plus one policy where you were trying to make Indian manufacturing self-reliant, make in India kind of a scenario. And therefore, like I said, I mean, linked to PLI, there was a lot of focus on various areas, especially pharma, electronics, white goods, key starting materials, etc. Then, two more important factors which the government really focused on this time was the social inclusion part of it, reaching the last mile, touching the fringe elements of the economy where, to just make it inclusive. So that was social inclusion. And of course, a lot of focus on climate change. So you have a lot of focus on green energy, solar, carbon credits, electronic vehicles, you have subsidies for manufacturing. So then you have a lot of focus on and youth empowerment. So I'll come to the job creation part of it also. Um, in this context, of course, the government has tried to push India on a global platform. For example, we assume the presidency of G20, which gives us a lot of visibility, which gives us a lot of power to say, to not be aligned to say either US or China, but can have our own sort of interest as India. Um, Again, there are a lot of digitization initiatives which are supposed to be undertaken, um, which largely is based not only on ease of doing business, but really ease of living. For example, a small irritant. Um, you have a lot of KYC kind of things where every other day you sign something, etc. So just digitizing everything through a common identifier could be a huge initiative. Procedural compliance hassle. So it's not only about ease of doing business; it's about ease of living. Coming to the markets, really, we have one of the most expensive markets, and I was shocked. We have one of the most expensive valuations at Nifty. For example, the price to earnings ratio average is about 21x, where usually average is about 14, 15 in the developed market. So, that could mean two things. Either the earnings can go up and the 21 P can come down, or the prices can go down. I would bet on the earnings going up, not the prices coming down. On the ground level, there's a lot of reforms, especially in the financial sector. One is IFSC, Gift City related. A lot of changes have come over the past 3 years, and some more over this year. Then you have capital market reforms. You have IBC, which is becoming more and more robust. Balance sheet health is improving, etc. Then there's a lot of focus on insurance penetration also. For example, there's this talk about having composite license where life and general insurance is going to be combined. So sure, businesses will expand, but obviously one will have to see the risks and all when it comes to actual implementation. Before going on to the main budget, I think three things. One is that over the years, three sectors have become very expensive. One is education, second is health, third is housing. For example, even after probably working for an entire life, people in Bombay may not be able to afford a home because it's just simply too expensive. Then, if you have some, and we don't have a social security net, we have to fund ourselves. So, health and education are becoming extremely expensive. So, in all this context, sure, the government has a lot of push, but really the value will come from the fact that if these huge targets are actually implemented on ground. One thing is to say and put it on paper. It just takes Microsoft Word and Excel to put in punch in numbers. But to actually implement it, not from Delhi, but on ground in the say hinterlands of Orissa, for example, that is where the game changer will be. So with 140 crore people, I think the real game changer is on ground execution and not to have uh, huge targets on this. So let me give you some numbers. This is from the budget. So I don't know. Would you be familiar with the concept of say fiscal deficit? Oh. So fiscal deficit is basically net the requirement of the government to borrow, and it's the difference between the total receipts and the total expenditure, and whatever is the shortfall, that is in the form of borrowings. So this time, for example, we had about 15.84 lakh crores of fiscal deficit, which translates to about 6.7% of our entire economy, which is about $3.5 trillion, or about, which will be $3.5 trillion. Right now, it's about 3.1 or something. So the point is that the target is to reduce it to 5.9 and ultimately to 4.5 by 2025-26. So, and remember, these are huge numbers. I mean, even 0.7% of a 15.84 lakh crores is about 1.1 lakh crores. So, it's a huge number to achieve. And if that is achievable, then obviously the pressure on government to borrow is substantially low. Just, just as an information point, I mean, what are these borrowings? When we say the government is borrowed, it will be in the form of government securities, treasury bills, actual borrowing, then the deposits with the government through various other schemes and also I think it's a combination of various things, but the main thing is government securities and T-bills, which are the base rates for these borrowings. Expenditure mainly, and I was surprised to know that the major expenditure comes. There are two components, by the way. So 14, I think, major expenditure this time and every year it comes through implementation of the central government schemes. For example, you have this Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Bima Yojana, etc. So all these central government schemes are quite expensive to implement. Now coming to the main budget, I think there were seven priorities in this budget, which they called it as the government called it as Saptarshi. So one is inclusive development, then last mile connectivity, youth power, financial sector related improvements, infrastructure and investments, trust-based governance, and of course you have the other fringe sort of elements which are not too important and focus on green energy, for example, was the seven pillars of this budget. So when I talk about inclusive development, there's a lot of focus on agriculture, health, education and skilling, and other certain things such as green energy, lab testing of diamonds, etc. Then last mile kind of an inclusion, which is basically focused on tribal groups. You have this Eklavya school program where it's basically like a Gurukul system where there'll be a dedicated Gurukul where tribal students will study there for about 7 8 years or something. So then you have digitization of ancient scriptures. So you have a lot of push in terms of the more inclusion of the larger segment of society. Then focusing on youth power, creating more jobs, upskilling them, making them more skillful in terms of competing with the world and technology. Then financial sector related investments, One glaring thing which came this time is on infrastructure and investment. So, for example, for railways, it was the highest capital outlay this time around. For example, about 2 lakh crores or 2 point, sorry, 2 lakh 64,000. So it's huge. And sometimes, so I'm from Ahmedabad originally. Sometimes rather than taking a flight, I would much prefer a one day car. Because it's just hassly when it comes to security check and boarding the flight and delays and all. So, I mean, it's the highest capital outlay, which is good. Just to give you a perspective, so in 2015, I'm good. So in 2015-16, it was about the total infrastructure expenditure was about 2.5 lakh crores. That target this time is 10 lakh crores. So I was just making a back of the envelope calculation that if I were to divide that with 365 days in a year, it comes to about 2,750 rupees, 2,750 crore rupees being spent per day, including Saturdays and Sundays. So the point that I'm trying to make is that sure, 10 lakh crores is a good target. Infrastructure push is a great initiative. But would that result in an on-ground execution is a question mark. So having lofty targets is good, but achievability in terms of actual execution may be difficult. And you have a lot of digitization. You have a lot of digitization initiatives based on the trust-based governance. So, for example, there's a lot of push on artificial intelligence this time. There's a national data program whereby you'll have a, say for example, you have a common address identifier. You will have a common through and it is linked to PAN. So you have a lot of digital push. Then you have a lot of focus on MSMEs. I was surprised to know that rather than the large corporates, MSMEs growth contribute significantly higher than large corporates because MSMEs are small establishments. They have low base. They are quite swift and agile, and therefore MSME contribute to India's growth quite substantially and much more than what I thought. Frankly, there's a significant double-digit contribution in exports, double-digit contribution in employment. The only problem that I see with MSMEs is, for example, if I'm a fresh graduate, why would I want to, and if I'm getting a good job, say at Unilever, why would I want to join an MSME? So to get that skill is very difficult when it comes to MSMEs. Having said which, there's a lot of good initiatives which are prescribed. For example, there is this e-code settlement system. So all the commercial disputes between MSMEs can be settled through a particular scheme. So commercial arbitration, dispute resolution, those are good things that will aid MSMEs. Coming to tax, so there were not many reforms this time around. And as Nani Palkiwala once said that the government lives under an misintuition that every amendment is good and every change brings progress. That is not really the case. Let me tell you. So when we think of tax, is not only about the rates; it's much more broad. So basically, A, the government has the power to change the rates, but more importantly, B, they have the power to redefine your income in the first place. I'm not kidding. So, for example, I don't know if you know about this structure called REITs and InvITs, Real Estate Investment Trust and Investment. I mean, when I was studying, I don't know if I ever would know about REITs or InvITs. Yeah, I know. Wow. I mean, I obviously AIF came in 2015, so obviously I studied about it much later. But it's good that you have a subject. So REITs and InvITs, for example, there's a pass through. So it's a trust. It's a trust structure. So you have unit holders, then you have a trust, and then you have investments in the form of SPVs, right? So whatever dividend, interest, or rental income is passed through to the unit holder, and unit holders are taxed. Fair enough, no problem. Now, one important aspect is that a lot of these SPVs are also funded through debt. So the trust takes on debt and then passes on to the SPVs, and then in the REIT, for example, more importantly in the REIT, it always invests in rental properties, right? So 90% of the cash flows are supposed to be passed back to the unit holders. So the accounting profit can be different, but cash flows can be different because on account of depreciation. So what they used to do, or what they still do, is that they repay certain units through repayment of debt. So certain portion is towards interest and dividend and rental income, but certain portion is towards repayment of debt. Now, logically, How can repayment of debt be income? It can never be income, right? Logically. This time the budget has introduced an amendment which says that repayment of debt is deemed income. Embassy, for example, embassy rate valuations crashed in the 3 days after budget, and it said that it will impact the entire structure, mostly to the extent of 40%, 30%. These are massive numbers, and and you can't just change the law because the embassy law, for example, attract a lot of foreign investments. So the trust.
Just to add, embassy is those who don't know, you know Mindspace?
Yes.
बस उसके पीछे. That's Embassy Park, which is one of the Raheja Group company. This is the first India trip which has been found. You may not be knowing the practicality. I'm sorry.
No, no, that's no, no. This is much more better perspective because
K Raheja Group, Mindspace in Malad East, Malad West. I'm sure many of you would have been roaming at around that mall. They will understand more clearly. Embassy is that area.
now they'll more remember that. Oh,
अब वो जब भी जाएंगे मुझे याद नहीं करेंगे और आपको भी याद नहीं.
that's a good way of making the recall. So, sorry. Yeah. So, I think repayment of debt. I mean, I can never in my world imagine that it will be an income, but it is income now. So I'll have to think and see. India unfortunately doesn't have a good financial market in terms of number of products. For example, of course, you have stock markets, but what next? What else? You don't really have. FD interest is lower than inflation. Why would you want to invest there? Then you have debt instruments, but sometimes companies blow up your even corporate debts which you thought were safe. Franklin Templeton classic example. So your money may never come back. Then you have government securities and all which you cannot really participate. You don't have a developed corporate bond market. So it's very then of course you have mutual funds, but all these are passive. You have complex instruments like AIFs. So private equity is basically AIF. So you have all these complex instruments, but the ticket size is too huge. For example, AIF, the minimum ticket size is 1 crore. For market linked debentures, and I'll come to MLDs also because that's another hot topic. So it's about, it's again, I mean, MLDs and all about, it's about 50 lakhs, 25 lakhs. So the ticket sizes are not that great. So we don't really have products, and you're killing REITs and InvITs now through this kind of a structure. So there's a lot of representation going on in Delhi right now as we speak that to remove this clause. So that's one part. The second part is, for example, one important aspect is, and I touched upon it briefly, that we had a huge NPA crisis in the past 5 years, right? So to solve that, we had IBC, and in IBC, essentially what happens is that if a borrower has say 10,000 crores of debt, even outside of IBC, it's not just IBC. So you then repay 2,000 crores and you take a haircut of 8,000 crores, just as an example. And in fact, I was shocked. The average recovery in IBC in non-liquidation cases is only 15 rupees to 15 cents per dollar, which is so. I mean, recently that Lavasa case came. So if you had invested as a homeowner about a crore rupees, you will end up getting 11,000 rupees back. That's it. So anyway, so the point that I'm trying to make is that um, in terms of this right back, there was, I mean, can you imagine if I've taken a loan, there is a haircut, so as a bank I'm making a loss. Can this 8,000 crores ever be taxable in the hands of the borrower? Never. It's a loss making it. So ICU mein, and then you are taxing it. So recently there's this amendment which is proposed which says that if I've received a benefit in kind or in cash or partly in kind or in cash, it will be deemed as an income. So effectively, all these cases, in my example, 8,000 crores rupees of it. There's a litigation. I mean, obviously, Supreme Court and all will settle, but it's a long-term litigation. So the larger point that I'm trying to make, and I won't go into specific provisions, but the larger point that I'm trying to make is that all these are outlier legislation. So we've entered into an era of outlier legislation. It's like saying that रात को 2 बजे किसी ने सिग्नल तोड़ा, इसलिए 24 hours के लिए I have deployed 4 traffic police on a signal which is anyway not congested. Why do you need that? So we've entered into an era of outlier legislation. So I was just talking to SEBI the other day, And for succession planning, we do a lot of succession planning for listed entities where you have to. So succession planning is a structure where there's a trust and there's a governance framework, etc. So whenever there's a listed entity comes in, I have to take SEBI's approval. In the past, some of the listed entities, small, they submit an X document to SEBI, and then once the approval comes, they change it with backdated entry. Now it's compulsorily, now they are amending the law to say that now all these documents will compulsorily require a registration with the sub-registrar, which is very hassly. And you know how on ground works. So to catch these 2%, which may not contribute much to the overall value, you are making outlier legislation. One classic example, and this will definitely dampen FDI flows into India and venture growth, is this ridiculous section called 5627B. So I don't know if you know, but there's this provision in India which says that any unjustified premium is taxable in the hands of the investigator. So this was introduced to catch some political sensitive. So what had happened is that there was this company without any cash flows with a 1 lakh rupee capital. Then somebody had to pay somebody something. So they put money, say about 1,000 crores, in a company which had no operations at a huge share premium. This share premium was then deemed as taxable, rightly so, in the hands of the company. But to catch that one case, an amendment was brought in that even if I were to invest in my company at a premium, I have to justify the premium on the basis of certain valuation. So this was only for residents. Now the audacity is that they have extended that to non-residents. So here, which is involved in this, but that's about it. So the point that I'm trying to make is that there are certain good investments, but then there are huge number of bad amendments also, just because they don't see a larger picture. Uh, for example, there are certain bad investments from a Bombay perspective, amendments. So you know this section called 54 and 54F. You have tax as a subject, or okay?
Set off. I think we all have.
Yes.
But this is possibly they do not have a capital gain deduction.
Acha.
So they have capital gains, but 54, I think would have been covered in a very small number. It will not be visible.
So let me just give you a picture. So basically, 54 is if I am an individual, if I sell a long-term capital asset, say residential house, and reinvest those proceeds back into a new house, then effectively to the extent of the proceeds reinvested, there is no capital gains. Effectively, I get a capital gains exemption. No. The amendment is, and this will impact tier one cities like Bombay especially, is now the limit is 10 crores. So for example, if I were to sell a property in Worli and reinvest and buy a property in Breach Candy, impossible. So this will obviously, one way to look at it is as a social escape. अरे बाबा इतना पैसा है तो फिर टैक्स कर दो ना. So one way to look at it is that, but that's not the only perspective, right? It should be equitable to all. So that is going to impact a lot. Then, like I said, there's a lot of deeming fictions which are introduced this time around, which is completely crazy. I can't understand still half of it. So then there are, one important aspect is what I was always talking about direct taxes, but one important aspect is GST also. So GST is at record high. I mean, 12 to 13 lakh crores of corrections every year is not a joke. It's not a joke. But then you have certain bad amendments also there. For example, I was shocked to see that if you purchase goods and services which are used for CSR activity, then you won't get a tax credit on that. So that's a cascading effect. I mean, if to मैं CSR कर रहा हूँ, let's say if I'm mandated to do under Companies Act, that's another story. But the point is, I'm doing a CSR genuinely, and the goods and services that I'm buying for that is now 18% suddenly more expensive. So that is completely against the basics. So on one hand, the government gives something. On the other hand, it takes away a lot of things. And that is the story. For example, personal taxation. Now the tax rates are slightly higher. So basically, you have the basic exemption slab till about 3 lakh rupees. Then you have rebate till about 7. So basically, till 7 lakh rupees, you don't pay any taxes. Then you have 30% taxes beyond 15 lakhs. Now, especially in say large corporates, 15 lakhs is an easy threshold to cross. I mean, you'll cross it in the first couple of years. So the point is that the threshold itself is so low. But then there are these lofty announcements to say that okay, we've given you higher tax slab, but your base is only low. The highest tax rate, India is one of the highest in the world. Income above 5 crores effectively was taxed at 43%. Now it's come down to 39%. I was just trying to think, what does it mean? So let's take an average number of 40%. So effectively, it means that 40% of the year, we just say if it is 12 months, 40% is about 5 months. 5 months you are working for the government, 7 months you are working for yourself. It's like a joint venture partnership. With, and I was just trying to think, I mean, it's not something great that the government, if I'm in a private job, neither do I get a social security net, nor do I get a proper infrastructure. I mean, Bombay, how it works in terms of traffic. So neither do I get proper infrastructure. So what is this 40% profit share in relation to? So it's basically that. So it's personal taxation is one, but then you have all these deeming fictions which completely outsize your tax rates as a corporate, as a business house, etc. So maybe sure, I mean there are 7, 8 good sectors that they'll be focusing on. Financial is one, infrastructure is the other. But I'll just try and end and say that taxes are very important, but you can't take something disproportionate to what you are giving. So I'll just pause over here. I thought that I'll just make it more interactive. If somebody has specific questions, maybe you can take it. So I'll just pause over here.
Is anybody else speaking now? No. Anyone? So what is tax holiday? Can you please stand up, Kumku? So what is tax holiday?
So in order to incentivize a lot of businesses, there was a lot of various types of tax holidays, but let me pick up some of them. So for example, let's say Northeast states were not very sort of developing, right? So to promote growth over there, government introduced this section called APIC, where if you set up a manufacturing unit over there, then profits for the first 10 years would be exempt. So that's one kind of a tax holiday. Then there was a lot of push on exports. So if you set up a export oriented unit in an SEZ, then for a certain number of years the taxes will be exempt. For startups, for example, it's still there. So startups APIC, if you're incorporating a company before 31st March 24, and then you are registering as a startup, then for the first 10 years the taxes are exempt. So these are various kinds of tax holidays.
Thank you so much, sir. Anybody else?
Not much. See, India is not. I mean, India is a significant player, but these budgets will not really impact other economies. It will be the other way around. Our budget will impact, for example, foreign inflows. Like I said, this taxing provision of unjustified premium, it will impact that. Then, if we are not able to maintain our fiscal deficit or current account deficit, then there will be a more pressure on the rupee. It's already at 82. It went from 75 to 82 in just no time. So the point is that what impact our budget will have in terms of the foreign flows to us rather than our outflows and impact on others.
What he does is after the session
Hmm.
in class he bothers me. वो मैम तो मुझे क्वेश्चन पूछना था तो वो at that time why you want
See, somewhere there's this wrong notion which has gotten into the government that you tax the rich. No, it's a wrong notion, frankly. So sure, there are a lot of good parts to say middle class. For example, um, increasing the maximum rate to only incomes above 15 lakhs is good because in a lot of tier two cities, 15 lakhs is just an aspiration to be even during the entire lifetime. So the point is that it's good, but certainly the rich are not uh, better off. That's what I would say because there's a lot of REITs, InvITs, market linked debentures, all those instruments which were available for investment are now suddenly taxed. Don't know. Yeah.
For startup,
Ah.
before budget
Hmm.
and after budget, there will be a huge differences as far as the taxation and budget part is concerned for the startup.
No, not taxation for sure. So startups again, there's this funny concept that you have to register yourself as a startup. Somebody will evaluate that you are a startup, etc. So there were a lot of initiatives which came before, not on this budget. I mean, there are certain tax, for example, one amendment which came that if you are registering a new company before 24 March 24, then you'll still be eligible for a tax holiday. So yeah, that's a good one. But at the same time, if you are not a registered startup, but you are still a startup in the sense that, let's say, if I open up a new consultancy firm, obviously I need some help from the market. So the point is, like I said, if somebody were to invest the share capital, so those kind of outlier provisions are basically something that I'll be careful about.
And one more, it was just like I heard in some of the YouTube small videos only, there is something very good coming up for women empowerment, skill development, specifically for women. So is this budget is a game changer? Because previously also it was there.
Previously
There
also,
are
so there's no
many
see,
schemes and
like I said, I mean, if at all this budget is a game changer, is only for infrastructure, not for anything else. I mean, see, all these initiatives are already there. For example, green energy. I mean, lot of impetus on solar, everything else, carbon credits, everything was already there. So there's nothing which is new. It's just this infrastructure 10 lakh number, which is quite glaring and out of the way. So that is the single focal point which will be important over the next 1 year. And of course, you have the elections coming up, so you want good infrastructure before the election. So you'll have something to show up in March or February next year. Yeah.
now India having a 3 trillion, 5 trillion economy. Okay. Now 2025 will be the year, India will be the only one country in the world which will be having the highest youngest population.
Yeah.
So this budget really will be able to help the skill development. And what about the job creation?
See, I mean, it goes hand in hand in the sense that see the problem the problem has it's not about this budget or any other. The problem is always about the disproportionality. The gap. For example, 5 trillion economy as a whole is great,
Yes.
but the point is who is sharing that $5 trillion pie. So if it is disproportionate in the sense that if it is concentrated onto particular conglomerate, and if they are not able to perform well, then job creation could be a challenge. But then if the growth comes through say development of MSMEs, and this government has focused a lot on MSMEs over the last couple of years. If it comes through MSMEs, then job creation will certainly be. So it's not a binary, like I said. I mean, the share in the large pie, who is sharing that is important. Yeah, yeah. So the point is that see today, unfortunately, what is happening is that you have this bully mentality because um, MSME है तो उसको पैसा नहीं दो, MSME है तो उसका लोन रेट्स हायर पे होगा, उसके पास सिक्योरिटीज नहीं है तो उसका रेट्स हाई होगा, अनसिक्योर्ड लोन होगा. So the problem is the on ground execution of these schemes or benefits to MSMEs will become important for job creation. So they need to be supported. They need a lot of see this ease of doing business and all is all humbug. I mean, you can't change certain forms on the MCA website and call it ease of doing business. So ease of doing business is actually when credit flows. There is a percolation of say RBI changing the rate, then it flows down to the banks and then to the MSMEs and then to the business and then to the households. So I think all those on ground implementation policy looks great. On ground implementation has always been the challenge.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I have a question. So we've seen so many tax reforms in previous budgets also, but we
I
always
wouldn't call those reforms. They are changes for sure.
Right.
I'm not sure those are reforms.
so but we always had this thing that the tax paying population or consortium has been pretty low
Hmm.
in the broader context. So sir, what changes have been made so that tax paying should be mandatory for each and every citizen of this country? Which is
It's always mandatory.
which has been the case.
No, it is always mandatory. As a student, you say you buy a bottle of water, there are indirect taxes embedded in it, and it starts at zero. So remember that where we talk about taxes, it's not direct taxes. Direct taxes is sure progressive, but GST and all is regressive in a way because households, for example, you are buying a phone, you pay GST inclusive of that. So your cost is anyway embedded even though you are not earning right now. The point therefore is that taxes have always been there. The point is for direct. Okay, so if your question is about direct taxes, there is no need for increasing the base. The output, the approach should not be to increase the rates or lowering the threshold. Say 15 lakh comes down to 10 lakh rupees. You pay 30% on any every single rupee after 10 lakh. The objective should not be that. If you really want to increase the base, you really want to work on the economy, increase the income of the businesses, create jobs. So automatically more job creation, more income, more business income, more tax. So the idea has to be on economic growth, not on increasing and tweaking tax rates.
Actually, my question was on the inclusion bit because as you say, the inclusion hasn't been so vast and so effective. And there's still only a section of people who
So that's what. So for example, today what happens is that all the high skilled guys are say migrating abroad. So they are never in the tax net. So if you were to create opportunities in India to create new businesses, to have more businesses, then wouldn't those guys be working over here? If they are working over here, then tax net will automatically increase. You don't need to lower the thresholds for taxing it. And why do you need that inclusion in the first place? For example, if I am earning say 10 lakh rupees, I would rather invest in a financial sector. I would rather buy a home. I would rather buy an asset than be paying taxes for which I don't have a benefit. For example, Sweden and Finland and all, there's a huge tax of 50%. But the point is that against that 50%, I get good public transport. I get free education. I get free health. In India, we don't get again anything against your highest tax slab. So the point is not to include by way of expanding the tax net. The point is to focus on growth of business and therefore make more people earn more money. That's how economy works, right?
Sir,
Yeah.
are there any chances of arising recession in the near future?
Good question, but capital markets, sure. I mean, there's a lot of disturbance. I was in the US the other month, and I was talking to a couple of private equity guys, and the problem is what has happened. There's always already recession in bits and parcels. Forget about public limited companies. There's a huge market of private limited companies.
Hmm.
For example, the valuations which went up, especially in the new age tech companies, Zomato, Laika, all those things, they have crashed. So there's already recession over there.
Hmm.
So what had happened, if you see it from a longer cycle perspective, there was a lot of credit expansion starting from 2008 when the financial crisis happened. Uske baad, there was a lot of credit expansion at cheap money.
Hmm.
And suddenly that inflow of cheap money added by further cheap money in COVID, those added a lot of valuation. Now against those cheap money, you're not able to generate a lot of assets.
Hmm.
So if you have money, you have to generate assets, but you're not able to generate a lot of assets. So now suddenly that balloon is bursting. There could be certain hiccups, but I think India still is in a strong position. I believe. I don't know if you believe in that.
we are in pretty strong.
Yeah,
Our economy is more resistant.
much more resilient. I mean, it's much more resilient to external shocks, but we cannot ignore that India is a part of a hyper-connected world. So we cannot ignore that. So there will be some.
There's a coupling and decoupling.
Yeah.
Coupling, we are coupled with the world, but we still need a lot of helping hand. Our imports are coming from Russia. That's a bigger challenge for us.
So for example, I'll give you this decoupling point.
The
NASDAQ.
crude comes from right now. Though we are happy that 40% of the crude is coming from Russia.
Yeah.
But crude in fact is 90% of our imports.
No, but one has to be careful. And I was just thinking about it. There were certain sensitive things which I won't disclose. But the point is, I was thinking about it. You know what this has done? This has made US very angry. In the sense that we are buying crude in rupees. So the dollar dominance is impacted. The monopoly of dollar dominance is starting to impact because a lot of countries are entering into these bilateral agreements where they are trading in local currencies. So if the dollar dominance is impacted, especially in a strong, as a result of a strong economy. For example, today we are a larger economy than the UK. We just crossed UK's economy in September. We are a very strong economy. So if that starts impacting, and if we are trying to make US angry because of this, there could be certain huge consequences when it comes to financial markets. No, so finance and geopolitical risks are quite intertwined in a way. Yeah.
Sir, but in this case, what you mentioned right now, it's a world of globalization, right? Every country is said to be independent in their own trades and everything, right? And they're all linked together, like you said. So that, like, there, first of all, there shouldn't be a dominance of a specific currency in the world,
But
which is there, which exists.
and that's not a result. See, globalization is a fairly new concept. See, for example, in all your lives, all you have seen is globalization, but it was not like this. If you see 70s, 80s, there was one country, there was an axis. You had Russia on one hand, very strong. You had US on the other. So you had two polars. Russia is now replaced by China. But again, it's not now in relation to axis. There are a lot of power centers which are coming up. India is pretty strong. Japan is sort of relatively strong. So all these countries by themselves don't need to be aligned. So the point is dollar dominance came long back in 70s, the effects of which we are seeing right now. But because of this 30-year, 40-year, 50-year runway, US is far ahead. It's a $20 trillion economy. So it's far ahead because of this runway. So the point that I'm trying to make is that if we are trying to, because we are hyper connected, if we are trying to make somebody, some larger player angry, there could be some ramifications in the short term. Long term, probably we'll find our way.
Sir, but if a country is making progress, like our country is making progress, just like you said, across UK, and as to become the fifth largest economy in the world. So basically, it's like US also at one point in time also crossed certain countries to become where it is right now.
Yeah, but it had a 50-year-old runway. See, the point is that today all the trades are done in dollars. I'll give you a classic example. So I was doing this fundraise for structured finance deal for somebody. We had to raise about $2.5 billion, which is about 20,000 crores. Now, I remember there was this talk on the interest rates. Now, interest rates now are completely aligned with the inflation rate. So on 20,000 crores, I got a rate of about 9 to 10% with security, which is huge, humongous. So the point that I'm trying to make is because all the trades are done in dollar, I don't have much borrowing power, bargaining power right now. So we'll get that, but it's a slow process. It's not a quick process. The obviously the last 10 years have been fantastic. I hope the next decade is also India's decade. But when we say India's decade, obviously it will have its own fair share of challenges.
So despite all the possible potentialities of ramifications, um, is it the waning of the monopoly, the
100%. So
is a
it
good
will
thing,
be
right?
so yeah, yeah. So it will be say 5 steps further, but recognize that it will be 2 steps also back. So net 3 steps will be positive, but it won't be that we are leaping leaps and bounds.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to call Dr. Samita ma'am to give vote of thanks.
Thank you.
So, good afternoon, everyone. We hope you have enjoyed the discussion what sir has given right now. Okay. So, sir has told in a short, we can say, it is our budget is extended or intended expenditure along with the various proposals and how to meet them with the, you can say, the limited resources because our demands are more and supply is limited. So, within that resources, how to maintain a budget equality, which is practically between income and expenditure. So Sir has given focus on this. Anyway, so it's my immense pleasure to propose vote of thanks. First of all, we are very thankful to our management for helping us and to conduct this kind of program. Secondly, we are very thankful to our, the principal madam who has always been a supportive agent for us and for giving us all kinds of inspiration to, maintain and to conduct this kind of events. Thirdly, we are equally indebted to Kannan sir, our vice principal, which has been supporting to conduct this program. Fourthly, our sincere gratitude goes to our eminent speaker, Parikh sir, who has represented the every aspect of the budget in a very, very lucid manner, in a very, very elaborative manner, and sir has explained the negativity and the positivity of the budget. Where do we stand? What is the status of the medium income level people, the rich people, the poor people? Sir has related rural economy along with Indian economy in a very, very prosperous manner and with examples. Now, along with that, the tax slabs, the tax problem, okay, startup, okay, then the collaborative activity, infrastructural development, 33% hike has been done. Then women development, to some extent, I has explained in a very elaborative manner. So, sir, thank you so much that for your giving us your, the talk and the knowledge, with the help of which we hope our students will be able to enjoy and remember. And the practical application and the presentation of the sir's talk on budget, we hope the student we will be able to relate between the practical application and the theoretical application and the presentation of the budget. Then our sincere thanks goes to our finance department for organizing this kind of the program. We are thankful to Vaibhav sir, we are thankful to Vaishali madam for arranging this kind of program where our students have been able to throw light upon that. Okay. And then we are, but not the list, we are equally and indebted to our student, the student team of the finance department, along with private school of economics, although the number is very less. Without whose support, this thing and this program would not have been successful. And we hope there have been many takeaways from this program where you can correlate your budget with your practical life along with you can see the practical implication in your day-to-day. So once again, thank you to you and for elaborating every aspect of the budget in a very, very elaborative and a simple manner. Thank you to everybody once again.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I would like to invite all the teachers, our guests, and the team members to come up for a
ये बंद करो क्या ये बंद करो क्या
हाँ कर दे हो गया